Every midnight, the Mafia boss's baby girl screamed. Not cried, screamed. The kind of sound that made grown men leave the room. Doctors found nothing. Specialists found nothing. But the night shift maid noticed what everyone else ignored. A tiny device on the baby's leg, moving position every night. What she discovered next made her the most wanted woman in the household. We've all had moments where we noticed something others ignored. If you love stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, join our community by subscribing and let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. The crying started at 11:58 p.m. Aisha Reynolds was restocking the upstairs linen closet when the first whimper drifted through the silence of the Blackwood mansion's third floor. Her hands stilled on the Egyptian cotton sheets. She'd been working here for 2 weeks, and she knew that sound by now, the warning before the storm. By 11:59, the whimper had become a wail. By midnight, it was a scream. Aisha abandoned the closet and moved quickly down the hallway, her soft-soled shoes silent against the imported marble. She reached the nursery just as the door burst open. A man emerged. Late 30s, neck tattoos creeping above his collar despite the three-piece charcoal suit. Dark hair slicked back, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. Leonard Blackwood. The man whose name appeared in police files that mysteriously disappeared. The man whose business rivals tended to relocate suddenly. Or not relocate at all. Call Dr. Morrison. Now. His voice was granite. Cold, sharp, absolute. Mrs. Grayson, the head housekeeper, a rail-thin woman in her 60s with disapproving eyes and silver hair twisted into an unforgiving bun, hurried after him. Mr. Blackwood, perhaps if we just... I said now. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. Aisha pressed herself against the wall as Leonard strode past, phone already at his ear, his other hand curled into a fist. She caught a glimpse of his face, fury, and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. A dangerous combination in a man who controlled half the city's underground. Mrs. Grayson noticed her standing there. Don't just hover, girl. The baby needs fresh bedding. Move. Aisha nodded and slipped into the nursery. The room was vast, decorated in soft whites and pale golds with an antique French crib positioned near the bay window. Moonlight filtered through sheer curtains, casting everything in a silvery glow that felt wrong somehow. Too peaceful for whatever was happening. In the crib lay Lily Blackwood. 6 months old. Daughter of Leonard and his wife Margot, the former society beauty who'd retreated from public life after the wedding. The baby was still crying, but weakly now. Her usually bright eyes were squeezed shut, her tiny fists clenched, her legs kicking frantically against the silk sheets. But one leg kicked differently than the other. Just slightly. Like something was bothering her. Aisha approached slowly, her heart pounding. She wasn't officially assigned to childcare, she was just general housekeeping, night shift. The invisible staff. The one nobody paid attention to. But that meant she saw things others didn't. She leaned over the crib, reaching for the baby. Lily's left leg jerked, and the motion pulled her onesie tight against her thigh. That's when Aisha saw it, or thought she did. A tiny shadow beneath the fabric, like a dark mark on the skin. What are you doing? Aisha spun around. Margot Blackwood stood in the doorway. Silk robe, not a hair out of place despite the late hour. Her face arranged in concern, but her eyes were sharp. Watching. Always watching. Mrs. Grayson sent me to change the bedding, Aisha said quickly. The baby's still in the crib. I know. She seemed uncomfortable. Her leg is fine. Margot moved into the room with practiced grace, positioning herself between Aisha and the crib. The doctors have examined her thoroughly. There's nothing wrong. She just has colic. Colic doesn't happen at the exact same time every. I said she's fine. Margot's voice dropped to ice. You're new here, so let me explain something. In this house, the staff doesn't offer medical opinions. The staff follows instructions. Mrs. Grayson should have taught you that. Aisha stepped back. Yes, ma'am. Good. Margot lifted Lily from the crib with mechanical efficiency, not tenderness. You can change the sheets now. Then go back to your duties. We have enough help with the baby. Aisha nodded, moving to strip the bedding, but her eyes stayed on that leg. On the way, Margot's hand carefully avoided touching the baby's left thigh. On the way, she carried Lily out of the room just a little too quickly. Something was wrong. And in a house full of dangerous men and buried secrets, Aisha had just decided to find out what. Even if it killed her. 3 weeks. 21 nights of screaming that started at midnight like something summoned by a clock. Aisha had counted every one. The Blackwood mansion had seen 6 doctors in that time. The first pediatrician suggested reflux and prescribed medication that did nothing. The second ran blood tests that came back clean. By the third doctor, Leonard had stopped asking politely. He'd started making demands, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet that made people nervous. I don't care what it costs, he'd told the neurologist on night 17, cornering her in the marble foyer at 1 a.m. You find out what's wrong with my daughter, or I find someone who can. The neurologist, a composed woman in her 50s who'd probably dealt with difficult parents before, had maintained her professional calm. Mr. Blackwood, I understand your frustration, but the EEG showed no abnormalities. No seizure activity, no neurological damage. Given the timing and the duration, this is most consistent with severe colic. Some babies? Colic doesn't follow a schedule. Leonard's tattooed hand had gripped the banister so hard his knuckles went white. Colic doesn't start at the exact same minute every single night. Actually, babies can develop patterns with colic. Get out. She'd left. They all did, eventually, with hefty checks and signed NDAs, and the visible relief of people escaping something they didn't want to understand. Aisha had started carrying a small notebook in her apron pocket on night 4. Nothing elaborate, just observations. Times. Patterns. The things people missed when they were too close to the problem or too far above to notice. 11:58 p.m., first whimper. 12 a.m., full crying. 12:03 a.m., Margot arrives. Every single night, the same sequence. Never at 12:01. Never at 12:04. Always 12:03, like she was waiting for something. The other staff had their own theories. Rosa, one of the day maids, crossed herself every time she passed the nursery. My abuela would say the baby can see things we can't. Spirits. The dead. The mansion's haunted. Thomas, the groundskeeper, had muttered over coffee in the kitchen. Built on bad land. Bad history. That's what you get. Mrs. Grayson had shut that down fast. Superstitious nonsense. The baby has colic. That's all. But even she wouldn't take the night shift in the nursery. No one would, except Aisha, who'd volunteered for it on night 7. Leonard had looked at her like she was insane, then nodded once and walked away. Margot had objected. She's just housekeeping. She has no childcare training. Then get me someone who does, Leonard had snapped. Someone who'll actually stay. No one else had volunteered. So Aisha watched. And counted. And wrote everything down in her little notebook, including the thing that bothered her most. Margot never rushed. Never panicked. Never arrived before that 3-minute mark, even though her bedroom was closer to the nursery than Leonard's study. She always knew exactly when to appear. And that was the detail that kept Aisha awake during her off hours, staring at the ceiling of her small room in the staff quarters, while the rest of the mansion pretended that midnight screaming was normal. The first night alone with Lily, Aisha positioned herself in the rocking chair by the window and waited. The nursery was quiet except for the soft tick of the antique clock on the mantel. Lily slept peacefully in her crib, bathed in the glow of a nightlight shaped like a star. 11:45 p.m. Normal breathing. Tiny fists curled against her chest. 11:52 p.m. A shift. Nothing dramatic, just a subtle tension in the baby's body, like she was bracing for something. 11:58 p.m. The first whimper. Lily's eyes squeezed shut, her face scrunching up in distress. Her left leg kicked once, twice, jerking against the mattress. By midnight, she was screaming. Aisha moved to the crib, hands gentle as she lifted the baby. "I know, sweetheart. I know." But Lily was inconsolable, her little body rigid with pain or fear or something Aisha couldn't name. And through it all, that left leg kept kicking, like she was trying to shake something off. At 12:03, Margot appeared in the doorway. "How is she?" "The same," Aisha said, not looking up from the baby. "I was just about to check her." "I'll take her." Margot moved forward, arms already extended. "Mrs. Blackwood, I think something might be bothering her leg." "I said I'll take her." Margot's voice had that edge again, the one that ended conversations. She lifted Lily from Aisha's arms with practiced efficiency and carried her out, leaving Aisha standing alone in the empty nursery. The second night, Aisha paid closer attention. Same pattern. 11:58, distress. Midnight, screaming. Left leg kicking frantically. But this time, before Margot could arrive, Aisha ran her hand down the baby's leg, feeling for anything unusual. There, on the outer thigh, about 3 inches above the knee. A small raised area, barely noticeable through the fabric. When Margot appeared at 12:03, Aisha stepped back without being asked. The third night, Aisha made her move. At 11:50, she carefully changed Lily's diaper, using the opportunity to examine the baby's leg properly. There it was, a tiny mark on the left thigh. Flesh-colored, roughly circular, maybe the size of a dime. It looked like a birthmark or a small skin tag, slightly raised from the surrounding skin. Aisha took a mental snapshot of its exact location, outer thigh, 3 inches above the knee, just to the right of center. The crying started at 11:58. By midnight, Lily was screaming and that leg was kicking again. Aisha's hands shook as she lifted the baby, supporting her weight while trying to soothe her. But her mind was racing. At 2:47 a.m., after Margot had finally left and Lily had cried herself into exhausted sleep, Aisha checked again. She gently pulled up the onesie, holding her phone's flashlight close to the baby's leg. The mark was still there. But it had moved. Not dramatically, just slightly. Maybe half an inch lower than before, closer to the knee. Aisha's breath caught. Birthmarks didn't move. Skin tags didn't relocate themselves. She stood there in the dark nursery, the only sound Lily's soft breathing and her own thundering heartbeat, and understood with sudden, terrible clarity. Something was very, very wrong. Aisha is about to walk into a trap that could cost her everything. If you are rooting for her to expose the truth no matter the cost, hit that like button right now. Let's see if she can survive the night. Night 4. Aisha came prepared. She'd tucked a small first aid kit into the drawer of the changing table during her afternoon rounds, hidden beneath spare washcloths where no one would notice. Inside, tweezers, cotton swabs, antiseptic wipes. Tools for examining what she'd found. At 11:55, while Lily was still calm, Aisha lifted her from the crib and laid her gently on the changing table. "Just checking you, sweetheart," she whispered, pulling out her phone. She turned on the flashlight, angling it close to the baby's left thigh. The mark was there, exactly where she'd last seen it. Circular, flesh-colored, slightly raised. But in the direct beam of light, Aisha saw something she'd missed before. A thin edge, almost invisible, where the mark met normal skin. Not a natural border. Too perfect. Too clean. Her hands trembled as she reached for the first aid kit. The tweezers were small, surgical grade, left over from a splinter incident with one of the staff. She brought them close to that edge, hesitating. If she was wrong, if this really was just a birthmark and she was losing her mind. 11:58, Lily whimpered. Now or never. Aisha gripped the edge with the tweezers and lifted, gently, barely any pressure. The mark moved. She felt it give slightly, adhesive separating from skin. Her breath caught. She pulled a little more, peeling it back like a bandage. Beneath the flesh-colored covering, something glinted in the flashlight beam. Metal. Plastic. Circuitry. It was a device. Thin, no bigger than a quarter, embedded in what looked like a medical-grade adhesive patch. The top surface was designed to blend with skin tone, nearly invisible. But underneath, pressed against Lily's thigh, were two tiny metal contacts, each no bigger than a pinhead, positioned precisely where they would touch nerve endings. Midnight. Lily started to scream. And Aisha felt it, a slight vibration under her fingers, so subtle she almost missed it. The device was activating, sending electrical pulses through those metal contacts directly into the baby's skin, shocking her, hurting her deliberately, methodically, on a timer. Aisha's blood turned to ice. This wasn't colic. This wasn't medical mystery. This was torture. Her first instinct was to rip it off, throw it away, destroy it. But her hands froze. Whoever had put this here would know. They'd know someone had found it. They'd know Aisha had interfered. And in a house like this, with a man like Leonard Blackwood and secrets buried in the walls, people who interfered didn't always survive. She forced herself to think. Phone. Evidence. She positioned the device carefully, making sure the metal contacts and circuitry were visible, and took 3 photos from different angles. The flash lit up the nursery like lightning. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Lily was screaming now, her little body rigid with pain. Aisha wanted to comfort her, wanted to tear the device away and make it stop. But instead, she did the hardest thing she'd ever done. She carefully pressed the adhesive back into place, smoothing it until it looked untouched. Until the mark appeared normal again. Then she lifted Lily, holding her close, whispering apologies the baby couldn't understand. At 12:03, Margot appeared in the doorway. And Aisha understood exactly who had put it there. Knowing was different from proving. Aisha had photos of the device, but she needed more. She needed to understand how it worked. Why Margot was doing this. And most importantly, she needed evidence that would convince Leonard before Margot could spin the story her way. So she started watching. Night 5, 10:07 p.m. Aisha had just finished turning down the beds in the guest wing when she heard footsteps on the marble stairs. Light, measured, deliberate. She pressed herself into the alcove near the linen closet and waited. Margot appeared at the top of the stairs, phone in hand, still dressed in her evening clothes. She glanced left, then right, then walked straight to the nursery and slipped inside. Leonard was in his study. Aisha had seen the light under his door, heard the low rumble of his voice on a phone call. He wouldn't be out for at least another hour. Margot stayed in the nursery for exactly 4 minutes. When she emerged, her expression was calm, satisfied. She descended the stairs without looking back. Night 6, Aisha was ready. At 9:45 p.m., she entered the nursery through the service entrance, the one the staff used during cleaning hours. The room had an adjoining bathroom, connected by a door that didn't quite close properly, a gap of about 2 inches if you positioned it carefully. She slipped into the bathroom and waited in the dark, phone silenced, heart hammering against her ribs. At 10:11 p.m., Margot entered. Through the crack in the door, Aisha watched her approach the crib. Lily was sleeping, peaceful, unaware. Margot reached down with clinical precision, lifted the baby's left leg, and pulled up the onesie. Her fingers found the device immediately, checking its position, pressing the edges to ensure the adhesive held. Then she pulled out her phone. The screen illuminated her face in the darkness, casting shadows under her eyes. She tapped something, an app, Aisha realized. A control interface. She was adjusting settings. Timer. Intensity. Duration. Bluetooth. The device was Bluetooth controlled. Margot could trigger it from anywhere in the house. From her bedroom. From the dining room. From right outside the nursery door at exactly 12:03 a.m., waiting for the screaming to start so she could play the concerned mother. Aisha's phone buzzed in her pocket. The sound was barely audible, just a faint vibration against fabric. But in the silent nursery, it might as well have been a gunshot. Margot's head snapped toward the bathroom, her eyes fixed on the crack in the door. "Who's there?" Her voice was cold, sharp. No pretense now. Aisha held her breath, pressed flat against the bathroom wall, praying the darkness would hide her. Her phone buzzed again, someone calling, unaware they'd just signed her death warrant. Margot moved toward the bathroom, her footsteps slow, purposeful. She was 3 feet from the door. Then 2. "I know someone's in there." Her hand reached for the doorknob. "Come out. Now." Aisha's mind raced. The window was too small. The main door meant passing Margot. There was nowhere to go. The doorknob turned. And Aisha realized she'd just made herself the most dangerous person in the Blackwood mansion. The doors swung open. Margot stood silhouetted in the doorway, her face unreadable in the darkness. "Oh." Aisha stepped forward, phone in hand, forcing her voice steady. "Mrs. Blackwood. The bathroom needed restocking. Didn't mean to startle you." Margot's eyes traveled from Aisha's face to the phone, then back again. A pause. Long enough to feel like drowning. "You shouldn't be up here this late. Your shift doesn't start until 11. Mrs. Grayson asked me to finish the inventory." The lie came smooth, practiced. Aisha had learned long ago that service staff survived by being invisible, forgettable, utterly beneath notice. Another pause. Then Margot stepped back. "Finish quickly. And stay out of the nursery unless specifically instructed." "Yes, ma'am." Margot left, but Aisha saw it in her eyes, suspicion. Seeds planted. And in the days that followed, those seeds grew teeth. It started small. Margot examining Aisha's work with new scrutiny, finding faults that didn't exist. A wrinkle in a pillowcase. Dust on a baseboard. The wrong brand of hand soap in the guest bathroom. "Sloppy," Margot said on day 2, her voice carrying through the hallway where other staff could hear. "I expect better from someone Leonard trusts with our home." By day 4, it escalated. Margot cornered Mrs. Grayson in the kitchen while Aisha was nearby, voice pitched just loud enough to be overheard. "I'm concerned about the new girl. She seems overly attached to Lily. It's not appropriate. She watches the baby constantly, even when she's not assigned to the nursery." Mrs. Grayson frowned. She volunteered for night shift. Mr. Blackwood approved. "My husband is dealing with significant business pressures. He's not thinking clearly about household matters." Margot's tone sharpened. "I've seen how she looks at Lily. Like, she thinks she's the mother. It's disturbing." Aisha's hands clenched around the dish towel she'd been folding. That afternoon, Leonard called her into his study. He looked exhausted, tie loosened, a tumbler of whiskey on the desk beside him. "Margot thinks you should move to day shift." "Sir, She says you're too involved with the baby. That it's becoming unhealthy." He rubbed his eyes. "I've got a shipping situation in Jersey, 3 shipments held up, and someone's leaking information to the feds. I don't have time for staff drama. I'm just trying to help Lily. That's what concerns her." Leonard's voice was flat, final. "Day shift starts Monday. Mrs. Grayson will reassign someone else to nights." 4 days. She had 4 days. That night, Aisha used the staff computer in the kitchen to upload her photos to 3 different email addresses, her own, her sister's, a free account she'd created specifically for this. She printed copies at the library during her break, stored them in a sealed envelope, and hid it behind the loose baseboard in her room. If Margot removed her from night shift, Lily would be alone with her torturer. No witnesses. No one watching. No one to stop it. The device would keep shocking. The baby would keep screaming. And everyone would keep calling it colic. Aisha stared at the photos spread across her bed, the device, the metal contacts, the Bluetooth interface on Margot's phone she'd captured through the bathroom crack. Evidence that should have been enough but wasn't, because in this house, Leonard trusted his wife more than a maid's word. She had 4 days to change that. 4 days to make him see the truth. Or 4 days to become another problem that disappeared in the night. Sunday night. Aisha's last shift before the reassignment. She'd planned everything down to the minute. At 9:30 p.m., she made a show of sneezing in the kitchen where Mrs. Grayson was reviewing tomorrow's menu. Sorry. Think I'm coming down with something. Mrs. Grayson frowned. You're on nights. Can you manage? I'll take some cold medicine. Might make me drowsy, but I'll keep the baby monitor on high. Aisha held up the portable monitor receiver, the one that showed video and audio. If Lily needs anything, I'll hear it. She'd made sure Margot was within earshot, standing in the hallway, supposedly checking the thermostat. At 10:15, Aisha climbed the stairs to the nursery, making her footsteps heavy, visible. She turned on the baby monitor camera, the one Leonard had installed weeks ago, the one everyone assumed was just for standard nursery surveillance. Then she stepped into the closet adjacent to the nursery, pulling the door almost closed, leaving just enough gap to see out. And she waited. The nursery was quiet. Lily slept peacefully, unaware. The clock ticked toward 11 o'clock. Then 11:30. At 11:45, the door opened. Margot entered, moving with purpose now, no pretense of maternal concern. She went straight to the crib, lifted Lily's leg, pulled up the onesie. Her phone came out, screen glowing in the darkness. Aisha hit record on her own phone, angling it through the crack in the closet door. Margot's fingers worked the device, adjusting the adhesive, checking the contacts. Then she opened her app and tapped the screen repeatedly. The interface showed numbers climbing voltage settings, duration settings. She was increasing the intensity. Tonight's shock would be worse than all the others. Planning something special? Aisha stepped out of the closet, phone raised, red recording light visible in the darkness. Margot spun around. For a moment, her face showed pure shock. Then the mask came down cold, calculated fury. You stupid little, she lunged. Aisha dodged, backing toward the wall, keeping the phone up, keeping it recording. It's already uploaded. You can't. Margot grabbed for the phone, nails raking across Aisha's wrist. The phone clattered to the floor. They both dove for it. Margot got there first, her fingers closing around it, but Aisha grabbed her wrist, holding on. Let go. Margot's voice was ice and venom. Her other hand shot out, catching Aisha's throat, squeezing. You should have minded your business. Aisha couldn't breathe. She clawed at Margot's hand, trying to pry the fingers away, but Margot was stronger than she looked, desperation lending her strength. The phone was still in Margot's other hand. If she destroyed it, if she deleted the video. Let her go. Leonard's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. He stood in the doorway, and in his hand was the baby monitor receiver. The one Aisha had made such a show of mentioning. The one that had broadcast everything, Margot's entrance, the device adjustment, the app interface, the attack, directly to wherever Leonard had been watching. Margot's hand loosened. Aisha sucked in air, stumbling backward. Leonard's eyes moved from his wife to the crib, where Lily still slept, her onesie pulled up, the device clearly visible on her small thigh, flesh-colored adhesive, metal contacts, the evidence of weeks of deliberate torture. Explain, he said, his voice so quiet it was terrifying. Explain what you've done to my daughter. Margot's composure finally shattered. And Aisha knew the truth was about to destroy everything. The psychiatric evaluation took 3 days. Margot didn't fight it, couldn't, with the video evidence, the device, the app records on her phone showing weeks of scheduled torture. The doctors used terms like severe postpartum psychosis and delusional resentment, explaining how pregnancy and childbirth had broken something fundamental in her mind. She'd never wanted children. Never wanted this life. Leonard had been a choice made by her family, a strategic alliance between her father's legitimate business empire and the Blackwood Underground. The pregnancy had trapped her, and in her fractured mind, Lily became the symbol of everything she'd lost: freedom, autonomy, herself. So she'd punished the child. Methodically. Precisely. Turning maternal instinct inside out into something dark and calculated. I just wanted her to stop, Margot had whispered during the evaluation, her voice hollow. Stop existing. Stop needing. Stop being the reason I couldn't leave. Leonard had her institutionalized at a private facility upstate. The divorce papers were filed within a week. In his world, betrayals were usually answered with violence, with disappearances, with bodies that never surfaced. But this was different. This was the mother of his child, broken in ways that made revenge meaningless. Besides, some prisons didn't need walls. The device was destroyed. The doctors confirmed Lily had no permanent damage, just weeks of pain that would fade from memory as she grew. Within a month, the midnight screaming stopped. Within 2, Lily started sleeping through the night. 6 months later, Aisha sat in the nursery rocking chair, the same one she'd waited in that first night. Lily was a year old now, healthy and bright-eyed, babbling nonsense words and grabbing at Aisha's hair with pudgy fingers. Leonard stood in the doorway, watching. He'd changed since that night, something softer in his eyes when he looked at his daughter, something haunted in the way he touched the spot where the device had been. I need to ask you something, he said. Aisha looked up, still rocking gently. Sir? Stop calling me that. You saved my daughter's life. He stepped into the room, hands in his pockets, shoulders less rigid than she'd ever seen them. I want you to stay. Not as a maid. As Lily's nanny. Full-time. Legal protections, proper salary, your own contract. I'll have my lawyers draw it up. Mr. Blackwood. She reaches for you first, he said quietly. When she's scared, when she's hurt, when she wakes up at night. You. Not me. Not the other staff. You. He looked at his daughter, and for a moment, the dangerous Mafia boss disappeared, leaving only a father who'd almost lost everything. I can protect her from a lot of things. But I can't be what you are to her. Sometimes the strongest heroes are the ones who simply pay attention. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to become part of our family. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this to life every single week. Aisha felt tears prick her eyes. I'd be honored. He nodded once, then left, closing the door softly behind him. The antique clock on the mantel chimed. Midnight. But this time, there was no screaming. No fear. Just Lily's soft breathing as she drifted towards sleep, her small hand wrapped around Aisha's finger. You're safe now, Aisha whispered, pressing a kiss to the baby's forehead. I promise. You're safe. Outside, the mansion settled into darkness. But in the nursery, lit by the star-shaped nightlight, Aisha rocked slowly back and forth, holding the child who'd needed her most. Finally, after everything, they were both exactly where they belonged.